Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, September the 4th, 2024. So today, or perhaps tomorrow, depending on where you are, Mars moves into Cancer. And I think this is an important event. Cancer is a cardinal sign, and I think this could affect us as individuals, and it could also affect the world at large. And this is something I will be discussing later in the video. But first of all, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, September the 4th, 2024. So just a reminder, if you like this video, I would be really happy if you were to like it by indicating that by pressing the like button. And if you're not subscribed, I would be really, really happy if you were to subscribe, provided of course you like the video. It just makes me feel so good when I get new subscribers. It's what life is all about, isn't it? Anyway, let's look at what's happening today. So here is the chart for today at noon. There we go. So we can see that the moon is very late Virgo at noon in New York today, 29:54 Virgo. So the moon is absolutely on the verge of moving into Libra. In fact, New York time, the moon moves into Libra at 12 minutes past noon, which is going to be 12 minutes past 9 in the morning if you're in California or the West Coast, British Columbia, Vancouver, British Columbia, but also Vancouver and Washington. Yeah, in that case, it's going to be 12 minutes past 9 in the morning. Now, if you're in Europe, well, in the UK, moon moves into Libra at, what is it time? At about 5:12 p.m. So late afternoon, sort of early evening if you're in Europe. And then if you're in Australia, New Zealand, Asia, then it's more about tomorrow, the moon moving into Libra. Still, it's an important sign change, moon moving from Virgo to Libra. I think, for one thing, it's moving across a cardinal point, 0 degrees Libra, and it's going to be opposition the Aries point. So there may be a focus on other people. It's not just about us, it's about the world out there. And the moon is also moving from an earth sign into an air sign. And so that does change the emphasis. Perhaps there's going to be more talking, more communication, more thinking, and perhaps just playing with ideas in a sort of gentle kind of way. Now, just before the moon moves into Libra, the moon makes an opposition to Neptune, and it also makes a trine to Uranus. So perhaps towards the beginning of the day, we're going to find with moon trine Neptune that there's going to be a certain amount of confusion, perhaps. And, the moon is not just trining Neptune, it's actually trining Uranus. So kind of we have a grand trine in earth signs. So we've got moon late Virgo, Uranus late Taurus, Pluto... sorry, let's get this straight. Yeah, we do have a grand trine. We've got moon, let's get moon trine Pluto, moon trine Uranus, and moon opposition Neptune. So what's happening is that the moon is picking up all of the outer planets. And we have this kind of fan-shaped pattern. There's Pluto opposition Uranus. We've got sort of Neptune on the midpoint, and the moon is picking up on that. So that might mean that we have access to stuff that we aren't normally aware of. We can perhaps see the inner machinations of the universe, but it might feel a little bit confusing. We're maybe dealing with something that is just over our head and we just don't understand it. We don't have to understand it. We can never understand it. The universe is complicated. It might have its own clockwork, but it's clockwork that is on a level that is going to be beyond us. And perhaps the best we can do is to just understand that we're never quite going to understand it, but it's nonetheless going to be important. Now, there is a configuration in Libra which I kind of should have talked about before, but I did for one of the signs, but one of the commenters picked up on this and said I missed it. Well, yes, I did miss it, and it's this conjunction between the South Node, Venus, and true Black Moon Lilith, and so maybe that conjunction is past exactitude, but it is still very much there. And so, what does it mean for Venus to be conjunct South Node and to be conjunct the true Black Moon Lilith? It may be that some of us should be careful who we mix with. I mean, Venus conjunct South Node, conjunct Black Moon Lilith can represent someone who is perhaps not of the best reputation. There may be a reputational issue. Perhaps we need to think about how we can safeguard our reputation. That might be important. It might be about, Venus could be about pleasure, forbidden pleasures, things we should have given up in the past that we perhaps still find ourselves attracted to. So that is a possibility about this conjunction in Libra. It doesn't strike me as being particularly healthy. And so, perhaps when we consider meeting people, consider spending time with people, we should ask, where are they in terms of our life development? Some people are from the past, and the past is the past, and we should just accept that. We don't have to meet them again. Sometimes it can be a bad idea to meet someone again. It's like Lot's wife, isn't it, in the Bible? She turned back, and what was it? How did it go? I think she was escaping from Sodom and Gomorrah, isn't that right? And she turned back and got turned into a pillar of salt. So we just mustn't look back. And if we have reminders of the past, perhaps we should just move on. So that's one thing going on today. But the main thing happening is Mars moving into Libra. So at noon New York time, there you can see Mars is at 29:54 Gemini. Now at what time? At 8:46 p.m. London time, Mars changes sign, moves into Cancer. Mars moves from Gemini to Cancer. And then you've got from a New York perspective, that would be 3:46 p.m. So, late in the day, or maybe tomorrow, Mars does move into Cancer. And that is an important sign change, because Cancer is the solstice point, or the solstice axis. Cancer, Aquarius. Cancer, Capricorn. Cancer, Capricorn they're the two solstice points. Because obviously the winter solstice is when the sun is at 0 degrees Capricorn, the summer solstice, at least in the northern hemisphere, when the sun is at 0 degrees Cancer. And so that really does matter, and Mars does manifest. Mars is square the Aries point, so that is about things happening in the world. Maybe Mars events. Mars events can be about violence. It can be about aggression. It's about people having to stand up for themselves. And, all of us may feel that at some level we need to stand up to ourselves, because stand up for ourselves, sorry, because Mars is square the Aries point. And so that really is important. Now, there is this question about whether or not Mars strengthens or weakens as it moves from Gemini to Cancer. And Mars in Cancer is kind of strange because it is fallen. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, so it is fallen in Cancer. So you could say that Mars doesn't work particularly well in the sign Cancer. However, Mars is not peregrine in Cancer. So when I say peregrine, the word peregrine means like wandering. It doesn't have a home. And it relates to dignity. So a planet with no dignity is regarded as being peregrine, I suppose, like the peregrine falcon, because the falcon, I suppose, is wandering. But Mars rules the water signs, at least using the scheme presented by William Lilly in Christian Astrology in the mid 17th century. So as Mars rules the water signs, Mars is in its own triplicity in Cancer. So it is a bit of a contradiction here. In one sense, Mars loses points. In another sense, it gains points. Traditionally, according to William Lilly's scheme, Mars would get -4 for being in its fall, and it would get +3 for being in its triplicity. So that's a net gain loss of -1. So all things being equal, I would have said Mars is weakened in Cancer, but Mars in Cancer can be quite assertive. And perhaps that is aided by the fact that it is in its own triplicity there. So Mars in Cancer, it doesn't just stay in Cancer for just a couple of days. Obviously, it is a long-term event, and it takes us through until November the 3rd and the 4th. November the 3rd or 4th, around then. And in fact, if you look at the horoscope for the day of the presidential election on November the 5th, you will see that Mars is at around 0 degrees Leo. So that's something to consider, because that is 2 months away, the presidential election. So it's taking 2 months for Mars to go through a sign. Now that's longer than usual. And that is a reminder that Mars is starting to slow down. I mean, this is kind of a note for the future, but Mars is slowing down in preparation for going retrograde. Now, it doesn't go retrograde until, I think, December the 6th, something like that. And so I think it goes retrograde at around 6 degrees Leo. So that means that if Mars is going retrograde at 6 degrees Leo, that means that next year, as you move into 2025, Mars will be, let me just tell you, give you an idea about what's going on here. I should have checked this out before. Yeah, at the beginning of January, Mars goes back into Cancer. So, you better get used to Mars being in Cancer, because Mars is in Cancer on and off until April 2025. So we've got a big chunk of time with Mars in Cancer. So yeah, get used to it. Okay, so that's the geocentric picture. So let's see what's happening heliocentrically. There we are. So if we put the Sun at the centre of the solar system, that's a broad picture. We can see that Venus is now moving away from the trine of Earth. So, we had that for the last couple of days, and I was thinking that Venus trine Earth could be kind of quite useful in terms of relationships, people getting on with each other. So that was helpful, I think. We just had the moon opposition Saturn. I think yesterday we had moon opposition Saturn, and that could have been a bit difficult for some relationships. But Venus trine Earth, or Venus trine the Earth heliocentrically, may have improved the situation. And also, right now we have got Mercury. There's Mercury, and Mercury is sextile Saturn today. So Mercury sextile Saturn, I would have said heliocentrically, that's quite a useful aspect. It allows us to be clever and perhaps to engage our mind on sorting out important tasks. So we can have sort of mental discipline with Mercury sextile Saturn. So hopefully you get a chance to use that. And additionally, we've got Mercury opposition Venus. It's a bit wide, Mercury opposition Venus, and it's just such an unusual aspect, Mercury opposition Venus, because geocentrically you can never get Mercury opposition Venus, but heliocentrically you certainly can. And so what you've got is you've got the Sun in the middle of a solar system, and you've got Mercury and Venus on opposite sides of the Sun. And so you could say, from a Sun's perspective, that Mercury and Venus are a long way from each other. They can't see each other because the Sun is in the way. So you might then understand that as saying, well, Mercury is about communication. It's about how we communicate. Venus is about other people, how we relate to other people. And it just may be, but with that opposition, it may be difficult to communicate in a way that other people understand or appreciate. So we might have something important to say, but the way we say it may be all wrong. It may be that we just don't take into account our audience. So, for example, here's me in front of a camera doing my YouTube videos with Mercury opposition Venus. I look at what's happening astrologically. I tell you what I think, and it doesn't make sense to you, or you don't like what I say, or you don't like the way I appear, and so you just run away. I mean, that would be an approach, wouldn't it? So all of us need to make sure that we communicate in such a way that people appreciate and understand us and also sympathize with us. And so we have to sympathize with them. So communication is really impossible without empathy. And so perhaps that is the message of a heliocentric Mercury-Venus opposition. So that is pretty much it. Just a reminder, Saturn is getting closer and closer to the semi-square with Pluto. Heliocentric semi-square. Heliocentrically, Pluto is in Aquarius, and it will stay in Aquarius. Planets don't go retrograde heliocentrically. So we can feel the pressure rising. Slowly, it's happening. It may feel for some of us like we're in a pressure cooker. Pressure's going up, more pressure, more heat. And I know actually a lot of people are complaining about heat waves, whether they're in Australia or Europe. I know there's a big heat wave in Australia. I know there's a heat wave in Europe, mega heat wave, I think, in Central Europe. And so a lot of people are suffering because of the heat, and that's not really what Saturn semi-square Pluto is about, but it's just that general feeling that many of us are feeling that we are in a pressure cooker, or maybe the world's in a pressure cooker and it's not us. And that is just a reminder, but it's a heliocentric chart, so it's more about the collective. Okay, let's now look at the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, September the 4th, 2024. Aries. Aries, there's a big change going on. Mars is moving into Cancer. and Mars is your ruler, and this represents a time when you may be wanting to put more effort and more energy into your home and your family life. It just may seem that there is a lot of pressure in this direction. And some Arians may for a time become more inward looking. And I think it's very important that you get used to Mars moving into Cancer, or rather Mars moving through Cancer, because Mars stays in Cancer on and off until April of next year. Okay, there is a time when it moves into Leo, but it goes retrograde, and it's back in Cancer. So consider your attitude to your home. How much energy do you want to put into your home and family? It's something you perhaps feel that you don't necessarily want to do, but nonetheless, circumstances might draw you in this direction. So, as an Aries, you do have a lot of energy at your disposal, but if you put this energy into one place and you don't have room to breathe, this energy can collapse in on itself, and it could become quite destructive. So I think it's just important that you have the right relationship to your home and your family. And if you're getting involved in anything to do with property or real estate, not just today or tomorrow, but over the next 6 months, I think that you do have to be careful, because it may end up being more trouble than it's worth. So make sure that you are properly protected, and also make sure that your family don't take you for granted. And because if you feel you're being taken for granted, you'll get annoyed, and there'll be a bad reaction on your part, and it could all turn into a mess. Now, I'm not saying it's a big problem. Mars is in its own triplicity in Cancer. So you are still going to have a fundamental strength. So it's just important that you assert yourself in ways that you feel comfortable with. That does matter. Now, on a different note, today we've got Moon moving into Libra, and that's more, I suppose, towards the end of the day. Might be into tomorrow if you're in Asia or Australia or New Zealand. But with Moon moving into Libra, that does change some of the emphasis. It puts the emphasis more on, I suppose, other people. There has been a lot of work to be done over the last few days, I think, a lot of preparation, but maybe you can be more relaxed, and if you can find the right people to interact with, I think you will then feel sort of fairly comfortable, and I think that you will be appreciated. And it's just very important that you don't feel that you have to do everything on your own. You don't. If there's something that needs to be done, then I think at the moment you can get a lot of support. But if you are getting support and help from outside, it's important that it all happens on your terms. Now, that can be a problem, because if someone offers help, then normally one thinks, well, one is really grateful that one offers help, that one is being offered help. But if someone offers help, but they want to do it on their terms, they want to help you their way, well, that's not quite so good, is it? Because it can be worse than useless. So free offers should certainly be listened to, or even if they're not free, they should certainly be listened to. But consider what the nature of that offer is, because you want to be in control, and you don't want to have a situation where you have to put up with someone doing things in a way that you're not entirely comfortable with. Taurus. Taurus, we've got Mars moving into Cancer, and Mars moving into Cancer could have an impact on you in several ways. So you might feel, for example, that you have to put more energy into the world around you. Not the world around you as in the other side of the earth, but rather your immediate community and the people who live around you, who exist around you. You know, sometimes you notice them, sometimes you don't. But with Mars moving into Cancer, I think that you do notice them. And so we may, for example, be talking about neighbours. You know, what is your relationship with your neighbours? So neighbours, that could be neighbours like people who literally live next to you, or if you live in an apartment block, the people who live above you, below you, across the corridor, whatever. It could be people who you work with or you are in close proximity to. But a lot of energy is perhaps going to go into this direction, and you might start to become aware of it today and tomorrow. And you do have to be careful, because where there's a neighbour, there's the possibility of a dispute. Because, you know, your territory and their territory, your space and their space, you know, they do have an interface, and that interface may be, I don't know, it may be jarring. And so with Mars moving into Cancer, Taurus, you perhaps need to consider, where are the possibilities for a dispute existing? Even if it doesn't exist right now, because Mars does stay in Cancer on and off until April. And that means that over the next, I don't know, what is that, 6 months or so, 6-7 months, there could be arguments and there could be disagreements. So see what you can do to resolve things now, and make sure that there aren't any arguments or disagreements. And if you can see an argument coming up over the horizon, perhaps you can take steps to make sure it never happens. But on a positive note, Mars moving into Cancer is, I would have said for you, quite communicative. You've got plenty to say, and I think you're able to speak with great power, and in such a way that people will listen to you. And you know, if a message has to be conveyed, I think you'll be able to convey that message, you know, with great conviction. Mars is also ruler of your opposite sign, Scorpio. So Mars moving from Gemini to Cancer may say something about the people close to you. They may be experiencing some kind of change. And that change might be that they could be becoming a little more fixed in their opinions, because, you know, Mars was in Gemini, it's now in Cancer, or it's about to move into Cancer, or they could become quite defensive. You know, remember, Mars in Cancer is defensive. Cancer is a defensive sign. So you put Mars in Cancer, then that does indicate that people are going to want to protect their views of the world. They're going to want to protect their lifestyle. And so perhaps you need to have some respect for that. You know, it's not a time where you can expect to change people or to expect them to give things away. You know, Cancer can be about hoarding. It can be about hoarding memories. It can be about hoarding friends as well. I mean, Cancer is very loyal. And so perhaps with Mars in Cancer, on on a very positive note, you may start to see that some people can be very loyal to you, and you do always need to respect other people's loyalties. And if you respect their loyalties and you give people your loyalty, then maybe you can expect loyalty in return. Now, on a different note, Taurus, the moon is starting to change sign. It will be happening today or tomorrow. It's sort of late afternoon if you're in the UK. Sort of around if you're in the Americas, that's this morning, or perhaps up to lunchtime. So with the moon moving into Libra, it's possibly a time when many Taurians are going to want things to be just right. That may be how it feels. And there is a certain continuation between Virgo and Libra. I know that the moon is in Virgo, moves from Virgo to Libra, but the continuation of Virgo and Libra is that these two signs are not completely different from each other. On paper, they are completely different because Virgo is an earth sign. It's a mutable earth sign. Libra is a cardinal air sign. So you'd think they are different. And normally signs that are next to each other are very different, but there is a certain continuation between these signs. And I think it relates to refinement. It's wanting things to be done in a particular way. And there is a certain balance there. Even with Moon and Virgo, if things are wrong, if the details are wrong, then clearly things are out of balance. And so with Moon moving into Libra, I think that there is a refinement here, and you have a refined view about the way things should be around you and the way people should behave, and certainly there is a sense of harmony and balance in terms of your living space, and you don't want to go out of harmony, because I suppose you take the view that if you go out of harmony, that's going to affect your health, could affect your psychological health, could even affect your physical health. And so perhaps that's what you should be striving for over the next few days, Taurus. Just a harmonious environment where everything is in order and nothing is disturbing you, and you're in control. We're not talking about you being in control in a way that really impinges on other people. It's just being in control of your own space, and you actually have a right to be in control of your own space, and it should be organized how you want it. And yeah, I think that is important both for your psychological and physical health. Gemini. Mars is leaving Gemini. I suppose in some respects that might be a good thing. I mean, Mars in Gemini, moving through your sign. I mean, I've got my sun in Gemini, so I suppose it might affect me. But with Mars moving in Gemini, there may be less pressure on you, because with Mars in Gemini, a lot of things have caught your attention. There have been a lot of things that you've kind of wanted to do, felt you had to do, and you could have put a lot of energy into lots of different things, and you might have felt that when you look back over what was happening over the last 6 weeks, perhaps you wasted time, or perhaps there was something that you decided to take really, really seriously, and you suddenly realized that you took it too seriously. You overdid it, and you tried to mess with something that was absolutely fine. You had something, it was perfect, it was in good order, but you messed with it. And because you messed with it, you're worried that you maybe destroyed something, and that can be Mars in Gemini, especially if you're a Gemini. But Mars is now in Cancer, so perhaps that means that the pressure is off. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. Though, with Mars moving into Cancer, some Geminis might feel that there are now new things to worry about. For example, money and security. You know, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, summer's over. Now you've got to face reality again. You've got to pay the bills. You've got to make sure that the money's coming in. What are you going to do for money over the autumn? You know, these kind of questions. And I don't know, autumn can, it can be a time when there are suddenly a lot of bills to pay. I mean, I don't know, at least in my experience, I don't know why everything seems to come to a head around sort of late October. I don't know, that's when there's a massive blast of expenditure late October. But that might be something that you're thinking about. I don't want to project my own worries onto you, but do consider the financial dimension. And of course, I've been looking at it in a negative way. Let's look at it in a positive way. So Mars moving into Cancer, it may be in its fall because it's exalted in Capricorn, but Mars is also in its own triplicity. Mars is not entirely uncomfortable in Cancer, and Cancer is a security-orientated sign. So Gemini, maybe with Mars in Cancer, it's saying that you can actually take action to make yourself feel more secure, especially on a financial level. Now, you have to be careful how you take action. You can't just do it however you want. You've got to consider other people's sensibilities, and you don't want to chase the wrong things. I mean, that would be very unfortunate. But if you handle it right, then I think not just today, but you know, remember Mars is on and off, moving through Cancer until April of next year. So perhaps there's a lot you can do if you focus properly to give yourself a greater level of financial and material security. And, you know, at the same time, you know, today, tomorrow, you are going to put a high premium on self-development. I think that was what I was talking about yesterday as well. It is a time when you can make things better for yourself. You do not have to be satisfied with the way things are. In fact, Gemini, you should not be satisfied with the way things are. It is not a time to be complacent. Things could certainly be better. That doesn't mean to say they're bad right now. They may be fine. Even if they're fine, they could still be better. So, Gemini, I think that is something that you could be working on. Cancer. Well, Mars is moving into your sign. So that is, I would have said, quite a big event. It's going to be particularly important if you're looking at your sign, if you're looking at your horoscopes from a perspective of your sun sign, then that's going to be particularly important if you're born, you know, in June, around the time of the summer solstice. You know, say you're born 21st, 22nd, 23rd. That could be an important time for you. Oh, Prince William, hasn't he? He's born on he's a Cancer, born on the summer solstice. So I don't know. Mars moving into Cancer could have quite a big impact on him. We may never hear about it. Maybe he's got problems with Harry. Who knows? And if you're looking at it from a perspective of your ascendant, and you know what degree your ascendant is, if your ascendant is early in Cancer, you know, I don't know, say the first 3 degrees of Cancer, it could be particularly powerful. But it doesn't matter the precise degree. Mars moving into Cancer, it is an important change. And I think on a positive note, Cancer, it does give you a certain amount of energy. It's certainly very energizing, and it sort of motivates you to do more things. And you might actually feel that at some level You can come out of your shell. You know, Cancer is, of course, the rule. You know, Cancer, the symbol for Cancer is, of course, the crab. But no, perhaps that's wrong. You can come out. You want to stay close to your shell, actually, but you want to defend yourself, because Cancer is a very defensive sign, and so perhaps with Mars moving through Cancer, your security systems are now on permanent alert. You understand perhaps that it is a dog-eat-dog world, that you always have to look after yourself, that you really cannot take anything for granted. And so I think many Cancerians with Mars starting to move into their sign are going to start to review their security systems. I mean, maybe literally, if you have security systems, you want to check that they're all in order. Cancer is not an entirely trusting sign, and it just might be a good idea to make sure that everything is in order. And in terms of your psychic defenses, don't forget your psychic defenses. There was a book, what was it called? I think I read it a long time ago. It was by Dion Fortune, and I think it was called Psychic Self-Defense. I mean, it's quite readable, but maybe we're talking about psychic self-defense here. So what do we mean by psychic self-defense? Well, I remember a long time ago I went to this psychic fair, and there was some psychic there, and she observed that I had a hole in my aura. I kind of know what she meant, a hole in your aura. So what does it mean to have a hole in your aura? Well, I suppose it means there's no defense from whatever's happening in the world, all the psychic vibes, people's feelings. They just flood in and they can be overwhelming. And so psychic self-defense for Cancerians could be just making sure that everything is protected, that there aren't any holes in your aura, that other people's feelings and emotions aren't upsetting you, undermining you. I mean, that is really quite possible. So psychic defense may be part of it. And perhaps you don't want to get too close to people who are very needy. Because if people are very needy, that can just be overwhelming, and they can be very draining. And you want to make sure that other people's problems don't get mixed up with your own problems. So I suppose you have to be very honest with yourself here. And I suppose that's particularly an issue if you're a therapist, for example. I mean, isn't it the case that if psychotherapists, that they need to be in therapy themselves, and they need a break, otherwise their clients can be completely overwhelming. So, that gives you an overall picture about Mars being in Cancer. I mean, I've been a little bit negative about it, but there is a plus side. I think that with Mars moving into Cancer, you're going to be very good at defending yourself. And it's not just about defense, it's about offense. There's a sense in which you have to, in which you can push your agenda. You can be assertive. You can get people to listen to you. You can get people to take you seriously. And so I think in that sense, I think Mars in Cancer could be really very useful. Now, short term, it may take you a little bit of time to get used to the fact that Mars is moving into Cancer. Because what we've got Mars moving into Cancer, but we also have Moon moving into Libra. Moon moving into Libra, Mars moving into Cancer, both cardinal signs. And so with Moon moving into Libra, you just may need a little bit of space over the next day or two just to relax, take it all in. You don't have to right now be all things to all people. You can look after yourself and nurture yourself, but don't be too indulgent about it. There are things to do. There are things that you do need to be thinking about and there are responsibilities that need to be taken seriously. But overall, I think perhaps your first priority is to look after yourself and just get used to the fact that there has been this big sign change of Mars moving from Gemini into your sign. Leo. Leo, you continue to be, in your own way, quite assertive, I would say. I think you do have a lot to say for yourself, and I think you're going to be very good at looking after your own interests. You certainly have your own interests, and these interests need to be protected. And the best way sometimes of protecting your own interests is to explain them. Is you need to explain to other people why they are important. And if something needs to be said, then you can't just keep it to yourself. And sometimes a little bit of verbal anger can be useful. It just stops people going too far. Just a couple of words and they back off. But it's not just about anger. It's also about you explaining your ideas, because you do have a lot of ideas at the moment, some really interesting ideas, and I think that people do need to hear about them. I think they'll find them useful, and if you can talk about your ideas in an animated, assertive kind of way, then so much the better. Now, talking about assertion, there is another thing going on today, tomorrow, and that is Mars moving into Cancer. And Mars moving into Cancer it's kind of a little bit tantalizing, because it might just feel that Mars is just getting closer and closer to moving into Leo. When Mars moves into Leo, that indicates a real sort of blast of energy. So not long to go. Well, maybe. The thing is that Mars will go into Leo in the beginning of November. That is true. But it doesn't stay in Leo for very long. I think it is, let me just get this right. I know I'm sort of being a bit forward thinking here, but Mars moves into Leo around the 3rd and 4th of May, and then in December Mars goes retrograde. And so what happens is that at the beginning of January Mars moves out of Leo. So yes, you've got Mars in Leo from early November to early January, then it's gone. Then it's back into Cancer. And so you might feel that everything is sort of coming together, perhaps, sort of right at the end of the year. But this is a time where you can really start to perhaps assert yourself. But then you have to kind of backtrack when Mars moves into Cancer. So, yeah, we've got Mars moving into Cancer. And so on and off, Mars is going to stay in Cancer for a long time, until April 2025, except for that interlude of a couple of months where it goes into Leo at the end of the year before retrograding back out. So with Mars moving into Cancer, it's about, where is your energy going? Where is it important for you to put your energy? And so with Mars moving into Cancer, it may be that you want to put your energy into things which are quite personal. Secrets, maybe. Some things do have to be kept secret, and maybe you should actually be thinking about longer term plans. What are your plans for next year? And maybe with Mars moving into Cancer, you should accept that some of the things you're working on now might not be ready to be pushed out into the limelight until, say, I don't know, until April of next year. So Leo, it's just very important that you're patient. And in terms of your health and well-being, you might want to assert yourself in ways that other people can't see, that are quite private. For example, if you want to get healthier and fitter, don't announce it. I think that is important, because if you announce it, then that creates expectations. You want to sort of work behind the scenes, and perhaps actually that's where your power lies. As a Leo, you can sometimes want to be very direct, but if you're in a conflict situation, then that means that the conflict, if you try to take people on directly, you're unlikely to win. On the other hand, if you do things in a roundabout kind of way and you're a bit devious, a bit secretive, then that's the best approach. After all, Mars is in Cancer. Don't crabs walk sideways and all this kind of thing. So a sideways approach might be the best way of going about things. Now, I don't know what your opportunities are, and I know it can be expensive, but if you do have the opportunity and you want to put your energy into something which can really help you in a way of, making you feel better about the world, do you have any connection with horses? Because Mars is moving into Cancer, and from a Leo perspective, you could say that is the 12th house. And in astrology, the 12th house is connected with horses. That is because the 6th house is animals smaller than a goat. Goat is the threshold. And the 12th house is animals larger than a goat. And, okay, that could be horses, it could be cows or whatever, but this is a time where things like horse riding or being close to large animals could actually make you feel better about yourself. Now, it is a bit of a two-edged sword, because you could say that Mars moving into Cancer could make you vulnerable to accidents in terms of horse riding or cattle, these animals larger than a goat. But at the same time, it's something where your energy could be put into, or where you want to throw your energy into that. Of course, with horses, I'm not suggesting that you gamble. That's one way of dealing with it, Mars in the 12th house, but that's not what I'm suggesting at all. Gambling is not a good idea. Betting on horses. Now, that's not what I mean. It's just that there's a certain affinity, perhaps, at the moment between now and April, perhaps with horses. It could sort of help you relax. That's just a possibility. I suppose in most cases that is a very unlikely way that things could work out. And on a more immediate level, we do have the moon moving from Virgo into Libra. I think that moon moving into Libra is possibly something that you really wanted. It makes things easy for yourself, moon moving into Libra. You've had the moon moving through Virgo for the last couple of days, and sometimes that just hasn't been great. Virgo is not really a Leo friendly sign, and perhaps you found yourself having to deal with stuff that you didn't really want to have to deal with. And with the moon moving into Libra, you can perhaps start to relax more, and people might also listen to you more, because being listened to is important, and you've got some things to say. And I'm not saying that whatever you've got to say it doesn't have to be very important, but it actually might be a couple of days when you might enjoy just gossiping, talking about nothing in particular, because it might just help you to relax. Virgo, you are feeling that something is changing, and that may have something to do with the moon being in late Virgo. Well, it does move from Virgo into Libra, but while the moon is in late Virgo, it makes a quite wonderful aspect with all of the outer planets. So the moon in late Libra is making a trine to Pluto, it's making a trine to Uranus, and it's making an opposition to Neptune. So there is a grand trine involving the moon. In fact, there's a kite. I think it's a kite. So a kite is when you've got a trine, but you've got an opposition tagged onto the grand trine. So that means that you can see a lot of things. You can see perhaps how the world is working, or rather, you feel that you have the opportunity to see how the world is working, but at the same time you're aware that it's really complicated. Of course, it's totally complicated, and a mere human being is simply not going to understand the full machinations of the universe and what it's trying to do and how destiny works. But you kind of almost feel that you're there. You can almost feel it, but sort of not quite. And I think that could be frustrating in some respects, because as a Virgo, you want to know what's going on, you want to know what's happening, and you want to be able to sort of predict the future, and you want to be able to define the future. And that's not something that you can do entirely, but you just get a glimpse. You get a glimpse behind the curtain. I think that's perhaps what it feels. And this glimpse may just last maybe a split second, but you get that glimpse. And you sort of get a feeling that you vaguely know where it's all going. And so do be open to this, and don't feel overwhelmed or confused by it. I mean, that is a possibility, with Moon trine Uranus, Moon trine Pluto, and indeed Moon opposition Neptune. It could be overwhelming, but why should you be overwhelmed? Just relax about it. Be relaxed about it, and start to perhaps understand your place in the cosmos, and also be sensitive and understand your sensitivity. If you're feeling sensitive with the moon in late Virgo, then make sure that you steer clear of contaminants. I mean, contaminants is always a problem, isn't it? PFAS. I mean, the news gets worse and worse about PFAS, doesn't it? These forever chemicals, a few parts per trillion can cause huge amounts of damage. PFAS is in everything. It even gets into your skin. So if you have a shower, the PFAS in the water can get into your skin, can get into your body, even if you are able to avoid drinking PFAS. And so that concept of contamination, which I suppose we all have to deal with, that may be something that is something that you're thinking about. PFAS, PFAS, look it up, or maybe don't look it up, because it is really concerning. Actually, here in Lakewood, in Washington, there's potential for PFAS contamination, because there's a military base where they were what were they doing? They were having drills to Joint Base Lewis McChord or something. They were having these drills where they were practicing putting out burning planes, and so they were using loads and loads of foam to put out these planes over a long period of time. These, thousands of gallons of this foam, and of course this foam contained these forever chemicals, these PFAS, and it sort of contaminated everywhere. It got into the water table, it got into wells, and it potentially poisoned the city's water. Of course the city say they've got it under control and it's not a problem, but it is a worry. And of course it's a particular worry if you're a Virgo, because Virgos do kind of worry about these kind of things, as you should. So what I'm kind of saying here, Virgo, is that you just may be aware of contaminants and it's a very Neptunian thing, Moon opposition Neptune. And, with Moon in late Virgo, and you are sensitive to this kind of thing. It's not that you are particularly vulnerable to contaminants, it's just that you understand that you live in an imperfect world, a world that is being polluted. And so this grand trine involving Uranus, Pluto and the Moon, and with Moon opposition Neptune, is just going to make you aware of this, and is perhaps going to make you a little more protective than usual. And I think that you're going to have a sense of the sort of interconnectedness of everything. And interconnectedness, it sounds nice in this sort of Buddhist way. We are all part of the creative process, but the interconnectedness is also about pollution, environmental havoc that certain chemicals are causing. Now, another thing going on, sorry to go on, I think I've been talking too much, but Mars is moving out of Virgo into Cancer. And so with Mars moving into Cancer, I think in some respects it does make things easier for you, because I think with Mars moving through Gemini, you may have felt a certain pressure to achieve. You may have felt there were things you had to do, that the eyes of the world were on you. And with Mars moving into Cancer, I think you can be a little more relaxed. Though Mars in Cancer may focus on your social life. So if you have a social life with Mars moving into Cancer, remember Mars is going to stay in Cancer on and off until April of next year. So with Mars moving into Cancer, there is a possibility that you fall out with some of your friends if you're not careful. So you have to really consider how your social life is configured. There may be people who you talk to a lot, you think they're your friends, but there is a potential for disagreement. And this potential for disagreement may be starting to manifest as Mars gathers strength in Cancer. So when you look at your friends, ask yourself how you might be able to fall out with them. And not just friends, your associates, people you meet in groups, because agreement may be hard to find. And one reason is that people can be defensive. You can be defensive. They can be defensive. They all have their little patches of dirt that they're trying to defend. That's Cancer. And it may be that trying to defend your patch of earth clashes with someone else's attempt to defend their patch of earth. And I'm not necessarily talking about a literal patch of earth. That could be about ideas, philosophies, principles. It could be about that. So do give some thought to your social life at the moment, right now. But there's no urgency, but it just might be a developing issue that sort of needs to be worked through between now and the spring. Libra, there are some important sign changes happening today or perhaps tomorrow. So we've got the Moon moving into Libra, into your sign, and we've got Mars moving into Cancer. So in terms of the Moon moving into Libra, this, I think, is maybe something of a relief for you. Moon moving into your sign. It moves into your sign if you're in the Americas, sort of perhaps late morning, noon if you're in New York, just after noon, and okay, it could be tomorrow if you're in Australia or New Zealand, but you've still got this experience of today or tomorrow of the Moon moving into Libra. And I think Moon moving into Libra, by and large, does give you a bit of a boost. It allows you to be more aware and sort of more with it, and also I think, to be more communicative. I mean, it's important to communicate. I think over the last couple of days, you may have found communication to be a little bit of a strain, but I do think it is becoming easier, and there may be, as the moon moves into Libra, a certain sense of comfort. I mean, it's nice to feel comfortable, though you don't want to feel too comfortable. The moon does actually start making a conjunction with the South Node, and also a conjunction with the Venus. I'll probably be talking more about that moon conjunct the South Node tomorrow, but I do need to say something about Venus conjunct the South Node. I mean, Venus was exactly conjunct the South Node, I think, yesterday, or the day before. I think it was yesterday. Venus conjunct the South Node, I think you need to be aware of how that might have an impact on you. There is a tendency here. Yes, you might feel comfortable today or tomorrow, but that Venus conjunct the South Node does maybe incline you to perhaps move in the wrong direction. You may be tempted to revisit the past, to just perhaps go back into bad habits, or perhaps meet with people who you shouldn't be meeting with anymore. You know, the past has certain accoutrements, shall we say. There are certain people who represent the past, and if you hang out with these people, you are going backwards. So, yeah, it's good to be comfortable, but you don't want to revisit old experiences and old people which are when I say old people, I mean people from the past. I'm not talking about their age. You don't want to just go backwards. That's not what life is about. Life is about progress. So it's very just important, don't get too comfortable. Don't see comfort as an end in itself. If you see comfort as an end in itself, then I think there is a problem. So try to move forward, try to understand the demands of the time, but at the same time, you don't want to be stressed out. And I think Moon in Libra can help you be a little more relaxed. And while that's happening, we've got Mars moving into Cancer. So Cancer is an important sign for Libra. Cancer does represent your ambitions. It represents where you want to go in life. It actually represents the future. You know, I talked about the past and how Venus conjunct the South Node may encourage you to go back into the past to revisit things that really you should have said goodbye to long ago. But with Mars moving into Cancer, there is an opposite push, or is it a pull? It's about moving into the future. And it may not always be easy, because Mars is potentially quite an aggressive energy. But with Mars in Cancer, you can aggressively pursue a particular agenda. And Mars stays in Cancer on and off until April 2025. So maybe that's what you need to think about. You know, what is the next 6 months going to be like? Yeah, there is a couple of months where it goes back into Leo. So what happens is Mars moves through Cancer, then it goes into Leo at the beginning of November, then the beginning of January it goes back into Cancer, and it stays in Cancer until April. So this might be a time when Librans really need to focus on what they want and pursue your aims with everything you've got. Of course, Kamala Harris, she's a Libra, isn't she? So I don't know how Mars in Cancer is going to impact her. Of course, we do have a time birth chart for Kamala Harris, but Kamala Harris, like many Librans, is very ambitious at the moment. She wants to be successful, and I suppose with Mars moving into Cancer, that's going to give her an extra push, but it should be giving you an extra push as well. So Mars in Cancer is about perhaps thinking about what you want and at the same time, not being in too much of a hurry, because Mars is going to be in Cancer for a long time. So you don't have to be looking for immediate results. It's perhaps about careful planning, slowly working out what you want, how you want it, how you're going to go about achieving your goals. And you may be helped by other people. Or in fact, in certain cases, you might project your ambitions onto someone else. I'm not sure if that's a good thing. So this is what some people do. Some people are ambitious, but they kind of take the view that they can't do it on their own. So they expect someone else to be successful. So are you putting that kind of pressure on another person? I mean, it could be, for example, on someone close to you. It could be a partner. It could be a family member. I suppose it could be a child, one of your children, for example. But expecting someone else to be successful, and perhaps you're doing that because you want someone else to perhaps live out your unfulfilled ambitions. I mean, I suppose there's no harm in that, but it's important to treat people with respect. People have their own way of doing things, and you can't expect people to do things your way. And that's something that you might want to consider. It's also possible that there might be issues caused by another person who is excessively ambitious. I suppose that might be especially the case if you're working, or you're involved in a career environment, or maybe if you're involved in, I don't know, a political environment where you've got people with different ambitions. I mean, I suppose people can have ambitions anywhere, even if it's voluntary work. You meet with volunteers. There's always someone playing power games, isn't there? And I think that might be what you experience. Someone playing power games. I don't think it's you. Someone is just desperate to be successful, desperate to be recognized, whether it's in a voluntary sphere, politically, it could be in terms of career. I suppose it could be about the family, about a member of your family wanting to be in control. But someone, and I don't think it's you, just throwing their weight around, and you're wondering why. Why do they want to be so successful? Why do they want to achieve so much? What's it all about? And is it just about their fragile ego? Someone just feeling that they have to get noticed, and that they are special? Yeah, some people do think they're special. And the question is, what do you do? Maybe the best thing to do is just let them get on with it. I mean, if they want advice, give it to them. But I think perhaps you just shouldn't let it bother you, unless, of course, their actions could lead to a negative result for you. And I suppose that would especially be the case, I suppose, if it was in a career setting. If someone wants to have an ego trip, if they're a volunteer, I don't know what they might be volunteering to, a group that pulls ivy off trees. That's a big issue around here. That's voluntary work. You wouldn't have thought with anything to do with power, but there's always scope for power. And you certainly see that in the environmental movement, don't you? Everyone has their agenda. And I think that's actually a particular problem in America. Too many people are into their own agenda, even when they're doing something voluntary. And so because there's so into their own agenda, nothing gets done. So, that Mars moving into Cancer, I think the best way of dealing with it is to own it. And be ambitious yourself. Don't push it out onto other people. Yeah, sure, it's good if other people are achieving their ambitions, but see what you can do to create big changes for yourself between now and April. Scorpio. Well, I have been talking a lot about Mars moving into Cancer. And Scorpio, Mars is your ruler. And so Mars moving into Cancer is a big deal. And I think that in your case, Mars moving into Cancer may actually be quite a good thing. I mean, it is a little bit of a two-edged sword for most people. But for one thing, Mars has been in Gemini for some time. And Scorpio, I don't think that you've been entirely comfortable with Mars being in Gemini. It's been a little introspective for you, and you've had to ask yourself a lot of questions, and there have been things going on that have annoyed you, and at the same time you just haven't really been able to express it all. But with Mars moving into Cancer, there is a sense of, at first I would have said relief that Mars is finally in a water sign. You Scorpio, you are a water sign, and the water signs are ruled by Mars. So when Mars moves into Cancer, Mars gains strength by the fact that it is in a water sign, and that means that you get strength. Now you could say, okay, you also lose strength because Mars is fallen in Cancer, but let's be positive about it. And also from a Scorpio perspective, Cancer is a really nice sign. It's a sign that is forward-looking. It's about looking beyond your immediate horizons. It's about seeing the world for what it really is, in all its variety. And it's also about exploring. It's accepting that what you have in front of you isn't the whole story. There's a lot more to be discovered. And with Mars moving into Cancer, ideally you would be putting your energy into finding out what the world is about. What opportunities have you missed? Because I'm sure there are opportunities that you've seen, you've been aware of them, but you haven't taken them seriously. But perhaps you get another chance now. And so with Mars moving into Cancer, and it's going to stay in Cancer on and off until April. So between now and April, it's very much a time for Scorpios to be, broadening your horizons. I mean, I know that's a bit of a cliche, broadening your horizons, but I mean, I do mean it. You are a fixed sign, Scorpio. You do sometimes like to be a little bit close-minded because things from the outside just could be threatening. I mean, I don't really mean close-minded. That's perhaps the wrong choice of words. But with your Scorpio personality, you do have a defensive streak, and Mars in Cancer allows you to perhaps broaden your scope of operations. In fact, you might recognize in terms of defense and how you defend yourself that perhaps one of the better ways of defending yourself is to actually understand what's happening around you, and just understanding things that in the past you hadn't taken them seriously, but by broadening your horizons you are actually defending yourself because you are having a better understanding of the world around you. Or I suppose if you want to take a conflict approach, and you take life as a conflict, then if you want to get the better of your enemy, then you better know your enemy, and you better know what makes your enemy tick. So that is very much a part of it, knowing your enemy. I was thinking of in the Second World War in North Africa. You had the African campaign, and you had was it Rommel and Montgomery, these two generals battling out in the desert, and both of them were Scorpios, and I thought that was really appropriate, two Scorpio generals, and so both trying to figure each other out. And yes, you can know your enemy. It's important to know your enemy, and if there is an enemy, and I think with Scorpios there very often is an enemy. Scorpio is not the most trusting sign, and I think Scorpio does understand that people can change. A friend one moment can be an enemy the next moment, and the more you know, the better. Now, Mars is moving through Cancer for a long time, until April. So it may be the case that some Scorpios feel that this is a time when they want to travel. Travel, may be very important to you, and always have to say when I talk about travel is that you absolutely need to look at your carbon footprint if you're planning on traveling. I mean, it is just quite massive how many tons of CO2 traveling produces, plane travel produces. And you could say, well, it's just me. There's just me on the aeroplane. But the thing is, if enough people decided not to travel by plane, then flights would get cancelled, and that would be good for the environment. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just my view. You don't have to take my view seriously. What I'm saying is not going to make any difference, is it? But travel could be important to you. You may just feel that you want to go somewhere else. You want to experience another part of the world. I mean, obviously you've got to deal with your conscience as far as the environmental impact, but some Scorpios might feel there's just somewhere you really want to visit between now and April. So it might be a time when you want to consider your travel plans. And I suppose you don't have to go travelling immediately because Mars is in Cancer. Well, Mars is in Cancer for so long. So where is it that you want to go? Or can you actually go there without travelling at all? Maybe it's travel of the spirit, of the mind, perhaps intellectual travel. But whatever it is, it's just about experiencing something different. So that's a bit sort of future orientated. It might seem a little bit abstract, sort of on a more down-to-earth level. The moon is moving into Libra. I mean, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. And with the moon moving into Libra, it might be a time, Scorpio, where you feel that you just need a little bit of space. Scorpios often need space. That's really important to them. And with the moon moving into Libra, perhaps over the next couple of days, you may actually feel that there's really not a lot you want to do, that you can observe things from a distance. That's fine, but I think if you were to do nothing over the next couple of days, you might find that you're allowing something to slip. There seems to be something that you are actually engaged in, and if you were to let go of it and ignore it and turn away for a couple of days, your hard work might be completely destroyed. So you have to keep something ticking over the next couple of days. Just make sure that something, I'm not quite sure what it is, I think you know what it is, just make sure that it's all in order and make sure that it's being looked after and is being maintained. And that perhaps should be your main task. It's not a big task, and if you are maintaining whatever it is that needs to be maintaining, then probably that's all you have to do. Sagittarius, you can feel that there is a change. One change you've got is that Mars is starting to move out of Mars is starting to move out of Gemini. So Mars has been in Gemini for some time, and it's on the verge of moving into Cancer. And In some ways, I think this is a good thing, because while Mars has been in Gemini, you have possibly been quite aware of the restraints on your freedom of action. And those restraints may have come down to other people or just situations which were beyond your control. And yeah, it might have been rather annoying. And so with Mars moving from Gemini into Cancer, and remember that Mars stays in Cancer, it has a brief visit to Leo at the end of the year and beginning of next, but by and large Mars stays in Cancer until April. And it just may be a time when you do have more control. You can do things your way. You don't have to worry too much about what other people are saying or doing, or at least you're going to have to worry less about it. But on the other hand, when you have to deal with something on your own, in your own way, it does often become more complicated. So it's perhaps going to be a time when you do have to put work into creating things which maybe are outside your comfort zone. And some Sagittarians may actually have to deal with things that are complicated maybe from a legal perspective, or it could be about, writing wills. That may be something you want to put your energy into. It doesn't matter how old you are. We can die at any time. So that might be something that you might want to put energy into, or maybe it's someone else's will, not your will. What kind of will has someone created? So that might be something to consider. Or just legal documents in general. If there's some agreement between you and someone else, or some contract, then it might need to be revisited. And if there's any signing of contracts over the next, 6 months or so, it's going to need a lot of attention from you. It's not something you can just take for granted, let someone else deal with it. You need to make sure that you're able to really engage with the small print. And it's something you don't want to do because, you're a Sagittarius, but it's something that I think you have to do. Though I must emphasize that I am talking about things from a longer term perspective. I'm not really talking immediately about what's going to happen today and tomorrow, though I do think today and tomorrow, as Mars moves from Gemini into Cancer, you just may feel that someone else, or maybe a few other people, kind of lose their influence, and that you feel a bit freer. So it would be a shame then if you were to spoil that freedom by spending too much time in other people's company, particularly the wrong people's company. And there is going to be a temptation to do that today, perhaps tomorrow, when the moon moves into Libra. Now, moon moving into Libra, moving out of Virgo into Libra, but it moves onto the south. It starts moving towards the south node, and with the moon moving towards the south node, there may be a certain temptation to just hang out with the wrong people, or to allow certain people to take up too much of your time, and it could turn into a bit of a black hole there. So if you start interacting with people, you start giving people your time, then you start giving people more and more of your time, and then the day may be gone. So I would suggest, Sagittarius, that you do, if possible, that you do restrict yourself in terms of your social activity. And having said that, your unconscious is quite busy at the moment, and so your unconscious actually knows what you should be doing, and you can trust your unconscious. And if your unconscious feels that you are spending too much time with another person, then your unconscious might actually do something to change the situation. For example, your unconscious might encourage you to say something horrible to say something really offensive. And the reason your unconscious would do that is because your unconscious wants you to end a conversation, or it maybe even want you to end a relationship. I don't think it's going to be that drastic, but your unconscious is going to intervene if you spend too much time with someone, and you'll just say something that is totally out of order. And in general, I think that is possible today, that you just, something slips out and which has a lasting impact. But I don't think that's going to happen, provided you make a conscious effort to be disciplined and to make sure that no one person takes up too much of your time. Capricorn. Capricorn, you probably feel that you want to get certain things done, and that there is a little bit of pressure on you. I mean, I don't mean this in an especially negative sense, but there is pressure, and you perhaps feel that you haven't got all the time in the world. And so, I mean, when I say all the time in the world, I don't mean all the time in the world on this planet. I'm just saying you haven't got all the time in the world in order to achieve a particular goal. And so there might be a sense of hurry over the next couple of days. Maybe it's because, if you're saying, if Northern Hemisphere, you can feel that summer's over, got to get going, and got to interact with people. Or maybe you may feel that there was something that got left behind. It was kind of half finished maybe a few months ago or whatever, and you were working on something and then you got distracted, and now you might feel, Capricorn, that you want to get going on it again, and that would quite possibly be a good thing to do, though you do have to ask whether or not it's appropriate. So you might have been working on something quite recently and you want to go back to it, but then you have to consider how much have things changed over the last couple of months. And it may be the case that things have changed so much over the last couple of months that what you were working on, what you thought was really important, is maybe no longer relevant. I mean, I'm saying that as a possibility. It's not necessarily really truly going to be the case, but that is something to bear in mind. Now, there are other things going on. We have a grand trine in earth signs, and of course Capricorn is an earth sign, so we've got Moon in late Virgo, trine Uranus in Taurus, trine Pluto in Capricorn, because Pluto, of course, has now gone back into Capricorn, and that grand trine, does have a direct impact on you, and I think there may be moments, particularly at the beginning of the day with this grand trine, where you are able to create a big change, a quite dramatic, but at the same time smooth change. It would just be absolutely clear that something has finally arrived. The moment has arrived, and you feel that you can transform everything around you from one thing into another. Now, it may start off at a sort of mental and emotional level. You have that inner change, and once you've made that inner change, then everything else starts to move. So it's just very important that you have a clear sense of your own agency, because you have strong agency today. And if things aren't as you like them, then you can turn them upside down. So that is definitely something you can do, and you can perhaps clear things out and sort of start afresh. Of course, I just said that there might be something from the past that is taking up a lot of your time, or you want to you want it to take up a lot of your time. You have to work out whether this is really something from the past that needs to be abandoned, or whether it's something you want to bring back to life. Maybe that's how the grand trine is going to work, bringing something to life, bringing a concept to life. I suppose, like Frankenstein's monster, you connect it with the lightning and you get life. So I suppose you have to ask yourself what that is and whether it's the right thing to do. Now, I should mention also that Mars is on the verge of moving into Cancer. And today or tomorrow, depending on your time zone, Mars moves into Cancer, and it stays in Cancer on and off until April. And Cancer is your opposite sign, and so this might mean that relationships start to take up an increasing amount of your time, and this is not just a short-term trend. This is a longer-term trend, and you then have to ask yourself, who are you bringing into your life? Who do you want to bring into your life? There is a danger here that you bring the wrong people into your life. People who, they may seem harmless, but once they've settled, they might be more trouble than they're worth. And when Mars changes sign, when it moves into Cancer, Mars is fallen in Cancer. And so between now and April, there is a possibility that you start to be attracted to people who are actually quite troublesome. They might not seem troublesome to begin with, but they could become a real problem. So do think very carefully about how you bring people into your life and whether you want to bring new people into your life. And it could be at any level. It could be romantic, it could be someone you go into a business partnership with, or it could be someone you hire to do a job. Whatever. If you see any sense of aggression, even if it's quite secretive, this aggression, then that's a warning sign. If you see that someone is very stuck in their ways, that's a warning sign. If you see that someone is defensive, that's another warning sign. So as you bring people into your life, ask questions. It's always very important to ask questions. Who are you dealing with? And it may be maybe that today and tomorrow it does start to become an issue straight away with Mars moving into Cancer. So never just take people at face value. Perhaps just ask some questions to find out who they are, who they're dealing with. And by doing that, you could be saving yourself a lot of trouble. Aquarius, you could benefit, I think, from the moon moving from Virgo into Libra. In fact, that may solve a lot of problems. Moon moving from Virgo to Libra. As I've said before, Moon in Virgo is not the best place if you're an Aquarian, and it's just a little bit too introspective. And with Moon moving into Libra, you just feel that there is sort of a greater sense of freedom, that you can be yourself more, and perhaps there are things you want to discuss, there are things you want to enjoy, and you can start to sort of get the big vision rather than to be worrying about lots of small details. But the moon in Libra does have its own problems for Aquarians. I think that there may be a sense in which you want a ready-made view of the world. You want almost an instant philosophy. You want to have a way of judging things in a way that doesn't require any thought. which kind of sounds a bit strange because, Moon in Libra, Libra is an air sign. It is about thinking, but in a way you want a template. So whatever issue you have to deal with, you've got an immediate answer, and that's how you want it. And I don't think that's entirely healthy. I think the Moon in Libra should be reminding you that every issue, whether it's an issue relating to your own personal life, whether it's an issue relating to your ideas, your philosophies, your politics, every single issue needs to be decided separately. Yeah, it might be tempting to see a linkage, but there are no linkages at the moment. Everything has got its own set of rules. And if you try to move one set of rules to something else, from situation A to situation B, there is a good chance that you're going to get it wrong. And so that is complicated. And I know the easy answer is to just come up with some broad philosophy that solves everything, that answers every question, but it's just not going to happen, even though it's very tempting. And so a bit of intellectual conscientiousness, I think, would be useful. There's no substitute for serious thinking and for intellectual inquiry. And don't be afraid of asking difficult questions. And in fact, don't be afraid of asking yourself difficult questions. I think it is going to be important, and it could be important. Now, I just said that Moon moving into Libra is a bit of a relief, I think. I think it's going to make things easier for you. On the other hand, we have Mars moving into Cancer today or tomorrow. And Mars moving into Cancer, it's not the best place for Mars to be, especially if you're an Aquarian. And with Mars moving into Cancer, and it's going to stay in Cancer for a long time. Okay, it briefly goes into Leo at the end of the year, beginning of next, but by and large it's in Cancer until April. So with Mars moving into Cancer, you may find that there are certain things that require a lot of effort. And it really can't be helped. And you have to be, I think, quite organized. And you want to make sure that you can put your energy into things in a very clear and consistent way. And it's not a time to be expecting instant results. But I mean, it needn't be too bad. I think that between now and April, you can go a long way towards sorting yourself out, at least on an administrative and an organizational level. And it also might have an impact on your body. I think that you might want to think about what you could be doing to make yourself fitter and healthier, and that may be where you want to put a lot of your energy. Of course, you've got to get some outside advice. You've got to get medical advice to make sure you don't do yourself an injury. But diet and exercise over the next 6 months as something that you really should consider, because it does seem that you, however fit and healthy you are, you could be fitter and healthier with the right action. It has to be the right action, and we're dealing with Mars. And so Mars, of course, can go wrong. Mars is a planet of injury. It's a planet of accidents. So in one sense, you have to look after your health and you have to make sure you're not doing anything stupid. On the other hand, you can do things which can boost your health. So if you take a responsible attitude, Mars can work in your favor. If you take an irresponsible attitude, then Mars can work against you. So it's just quite important that you handle Mars's movement through Cancer, in the right way. So that is a change which I think could be quite significant. And really, that's probably about it. I do think that over the course of the day, you can probably actually do some quite serious thinking. You are going to be serious, and there are things you need to think about which may relate to what you're trying to achieve, and you are actually able to sort of discipline your thoughts. So you might have an ambition and something you want to do, but actually could be something very creative. But you also know that on its own, it's not really going to go anywhere. So what you can do is sort of work it through and be very focused on it. And when you talk about your ideas, and particularly your creative ideas, you are going to be very serious about it, and people will notice your seriousness. And in fact, some people may actually realize for the first time that you are serious. So if something's important to you, it's not a time to laugh about it, joke about it, to dismiss it. Just be very clear, this is important to me. Once people realize it's important to you, then they'll be prepared to offer you more respect. I mean, I'm not saying they don't respect you already, but I think they'll respect you even more. So I think a serious approach today could pay handsome dividends. Pisces, you may be feeling a grand trine in earth signs. So there is this grand trine today. So you've got Moon in late Virgo, it's trine Uranus, and it's trine Pluto. And that Moon in late Virgo is, of course, in your opposite sign, because Pisces, the opposite sign of Pisces is Virgo. So, Virgo is an important sign to every Pisces. And so with this grand trine in earth signs, you may actually get some new insights. And these insights may start with another person. Maybe someone points something out to you, or maybe they do something that you maybe weren't expecting, but you see someone's behavior, you listen to them, and then suddenly things start to make a little bit of sense. They don't make full sense, but you can see that something is happening, and you may feel that you're around at the beginning of something. You can see the start of a process. You're there at the beginning of this process, and that sort of gives you some important insights which I think you might be able to use at a later stage. And while this is happening, you've got Mars in very late Gemini. So Mars is about to move into Cancer. So this is a big change. So with Mars moving through Gemini, there might have been quite a bit of focus on maybe on your home or your family. That's where a lot of your energy had to go. Perhaps you felt at times that it was too much energy. But with Mars moving from Gemini into Cancer, I think that is, I would have said, a favourable change. Mars rules the water signs. Mars rules Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio. So with Mars moving into Cancer, remembering that you are a water sign, so that may allow you to assert yourself in a way that is more concordant with your fundamental destiny. And, over the next few months, in fact, Mars stays in Cancer on and off until April. And so between now and April, it's a time when you can, I think, be really very creative. And I mean creative in a very sincere and serious way. It's doing something which is really fundamental to you and your imagination. And certainly if you're a Piscean artist, or you do anything of an artistic or creative nature, then between now and April, I think you can really achieve wonders. You can create some amazing stuff. And I think part of the reason that you'll be able to create amazing stuff is you'll have a powerful imagination, but you'll also have the energy in which to manifest this imagination in terms of what you're actually able to produce. And I think that's something that very much should be welcomed. And so it's not just a one-off thing, Mars moving into Cancer. Mars goes into Cancer, so it's had its effect after a couple of days and you move on to something else. No, Mars stays in Cancer for a long time. And of course, real creative activity does require time, but now you've got the time, so you do make sure that you make the most of it. Now, going back to that grand trine, so there was this grand trine, or is this grand trine in Earth signs in which a moon is involved, but that's not the whole story, because the moon actually makes an opposition to Neptune. And remember, Neptune is in Pisces, and so the moon opposition Neptune is right across the main axis of your chart. And so it does pick up that grand trine. And so that might mean that you start to feel that certain relationships are in a process of change, or maybe you're aware that people are in a process of change. You may not even be in a relationship with them. You just notice that their approach is changing. Perhaps they're becoming more sensitive. Perhaps they're not behaving as you had expected. And it might be easy to jump to conclusions. But, this is a complicated process. People become aware of things at different times. So maybe it would be a good day for just observing people and not reaching conclusions. Just watch them be influenced by the universe. Yeah, you're being influenced by the universe. I suppose we're all being influenced by the universe. I think you particular are being influenced by it. I think you are seeing other people's impact on you, and those people in themselves are, if you like, being influenced by something beyond them. And so, yeah, look carefully at other people's behavior, because there is something interesting going on, and you may not be able to verbalize it, but because you're a Pisces and because you've got that sensitivity, and you can, in many respects, deal with things on a non-verbal level, you're perhaps in a good position to actually understand what's going on, not to act on the basis of this understanding. I think that will have to come later. So that's it. Those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And I now want to look at today from a perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was number 56, which is the Wanderer. And this perhaps tells us about how we relate to the world around us. And many of us might feel that we are not really on home territory. We're doing something that we're unfamiliar with. It may not be that we're literally wandering, but we're literally in a place we don't know and don't understand, but it sometimes feels like we are a wanderer. And, as a wanderer, we don't have much strength. We are reliant on the land in which we are wandering. We have to have good relations with the people around us because we are a wanderer and we don't have any roots. And with the wanderer, what we're really looking for is somewhere secure. We're looking for home, and until we find home, we are still a wanderer. Now, this might relate to an activity you're engaged in which you just don't understand. You may be at home, very secure at home, but there's something you're doing that you just don't get it. It doesn't mean anything to you, and you're trying to work it out, but you're not making much progress. At least that's how it might feel. Now, there are two moving lines here, and the bottom line indicates that at the moment, in terms of whatever our attention is focused on, and I do think we're focused on something that we don't feel entirely familiar with, but whatever it is, we simply don't have enough resources. And I suppose this is a problem about being a wanderer. A wanderer can only carry what they can put in their backpack. Wanderers usually don't have access to large amounts of money. It's not really about money. It's just about resources in general, what we've taken with us. We perhaps, we've taken a loaf of bread with us, and we've got to support ourselves with whatever is in our backpack. And so when we're in a situation with low resources, we have to be very careful. We have to take into account the seriousness of the time. And the I Ching warns us that maybe we might make light of the matter. We might joke about ourselves, look at me, I haven't got a clue, isn't that funny? Well, it's not really funny at all. And you certainly don't want to attract attention through a light-hearted approach. It is serious. And if you take it seriously and you accept that you have low resources, then that is going to make it easier. Now, fortunately, there are two lines moving. The bottom line isn't great, but then the fifth line moves. And in the I Ching, when the fifth line moves, tends to be fortunate. And it is about getting recognition and support. So it starts kind of this position of being, I suppose, not quite lost, but just with no grounding, no support, in a very vulnerable position. It does transition to being actually in quite a strong position, because finally, if we do things right, we can get recognition. And I suppose, for example, if you're looking for a job, or if you're looking for some feedback from someone, you might feel you haven't, to begin with in a day, you might not feel you're getting anywhere. But in the end, someone recognizes us. Something we do gets noticed, and people think, oh, that's good. You've obviously got a talent here. And so with effort, and if we take a serious approach, then in the end, we do start to make progress, and we do get some positive feedback. And that leads to the second hexagram, because we've got two lines moving. And the second hexagram is with others, or as the Wilhelm translation says, the fellowship with men. And so with others means that we start off being quite alone here as the wanderer, without much support. And through our own efforts, we get recognition, and with others suggests that we can deepen our relationships with other people, with the group, and by being with others, getting other people's support, we can actually start to achieve our aims. We can cross the great water, as the I Ching likes to say. And it's not as an individual, it's not as a lonely wanderer that we're able to cross the Great Water. We can do it because we are part of the group, and that's definitely the way to progress. So the general message is, on your own, there's possibly not much you can achieve, but once you get the support of others, once you are in a group, then you can really start to accomplish quite a lot. And yes, you can in the end cross the Great Water. Of course, metaphorically, so I'm not suggesting you ford streams or anything like that. It's still the wanderer. The wanderer does have to be cautious, mustn't undertake tasks which are beyond you. But once you're in a group, I think that you can make good progress. And so the big event today, or perhaps tomorrow, is Mars in Cancer, and that's something I now wanted to look at. So, Mars. It's important that Mars is Mars going into Cancer is important because it's a cardinal point. Cancer, 0 degrees Cancer. It's a solstice point, and so when Mars hits that exact point, the solstice point, it's almost like a gateway opens potentially, and it does indeed impact. It does impact the world, and it can be quite aggressive because Mars is quite an aggressive planet. It is about violence. It is about warfare, and we might be feeling a bit on edge with Mars crossing the solstice point, and we just might feel that we do have to assert ourselves. Now, perhaps we also feel that if we don't assert ourselves, then someone else is going to assert themselves, and then we might have a conflict situation. So what we can actually do is we can do a chart for when Mars enters Cancer. So that is the precise moment that Mars enters Cancer from the perspective of sort of Westminster. My software says that it's at 8:46. Yeah, that's 8:46 p.m. London time today is when that happens, and it will of course be earlier in the day if you're in the Americas, later in the day if you're in continental Europe or most of continental Europe and Asia, Australia and New Zealand. But it is an important moment, and so the question is, what is Mars doing at that moment where it enters Cancer? Well, we do know that Mars is square Neptune. I've been talking about that quite a lot. So there may be a Mars-Neptune feel, not just today, but perhaps over the next few months. But I've thought particularly over the next couple of weeks. Mars-Neptune. I've talked a lot about this. It's perhaps about water. It's about confusion. It's about deception. It's about chemicals. It's perhaps about contamination. But it can be also about spirituality. And if you look at that point that when Mars moves into Cancer, you'll see at the same time that the Mars moves into Cancer, Moon is in Libra. So we've got Moon square Mars, and so that I think makes this Mars ingress into Cancer particularly important, particularly significant. And I think that would be, I suppose, from a global perspective, in places where both Moon and Mars are angular. So let's just do some astrocartography on this. So we're going to look at where, let's have an astro map. So we'll start off by looking at the world, and there it is. So if you look at this yellow line here going through the eastern United States, so these are all the places where at the time of the ingress Mars is exactly on the descendant. So you can see it goes through sort of Mexico, it goes through, where is that? It goes through Georgia, and again, it goes pretty close to the East Coast. I mean, the New York, Washington, it's not exactly on New York and Washington, but we can probably expect Mars to be quite close to the descendant on, the New York, the sort of financial capital of the United States, plus Washington, D.C., the political capital. So I think that this ingress of Mars going into Cancer could well have an impact on the United States. There is a theoretical point here. This is a place, Moon on the midheaven, and where Moon is on the midheaven and Mars is on the IC. Well, in fact, this is perhaps out to sea, so that's probably not going to necessarily have much of an impact. And looking at other parts of the world, looking at Russia, there's Moscow. Moscow, Mars is conjunct the ascendant there, and that is something perhaps we need to think about. What does it mean for Mars to be conjunct the ascendant in Moscow at the time of the ingress? And I suppose Russia is at war. Russia is at war with Ukraine. In fact, Russia is effectively at war with NATO. And so with Mars rising, that might indicate that the war in Ukraine is perhaps reaching perhaps a critical stage, or something happens. I mean, it could be that Russia is the victim of an attack. It would have to be a very big attack, or is perhaps a perpetrator of a big attack. But perhaps to get some more detail about that, we would need to look at sort of individual charts for this. So here is a chart for the Mars. So that's for Westminster. So let's now move to the chart for Washington, D.C. So this is relocated to Washington, D.C. So there's Mars at 0 degrees Cancer. At that precise moment, Mars is on the descendant in Washington, D.C. So that could represent the US being victim of an attack. I mean, that is possible. It may not be about warfare. It could just be about aggravation. You're just getting to a crucial stage in the election cycle with Mars on the descendant, and it's not going to be nice. There's going to be a general atmosphere of extreme unpleasantness. I mean, you didn't need astrology to tell you that, did you? But Mars is a planet of war, and one wonders who is the United States going to be involved with in a sort of a military sense. And so Mars is on a descendant you set that for Washington. But if you relocate that chart to Moscow, Mars is on the ascendant. So I'm wondering if you've got this situation where Mars is on the ascendant in Moscow, Mars is on the descendant in Washington, D.C. What kind of conflict are the US and Russia going to get involved with? I think that we could see Ukraine really moving maybe into its final phase. I mean, I know all sorts of things are happening in Ukraine right now. There is a story that now that Ukraine's defences in the Donbass are starting to collapse, and at the same time, Ukraine are still occupy part of the Kursk region of Russia. So the war has certainly becoming a lot more dramatic. We know that. And now we've got Mars going into Cancer on the ascendant in Moscow, on the descendant in Washington. What are they going to do? What is the US going to do? How is the US going to prevent a collapse of Ukraine? I mean, that may be the issue with this Mars on the solstice point. So that's one way of looking at it. And Mars going into Cancer is important in terms of the United States for another reason. And it's, if you look at the chart for the USA, here's the USA chart. The USA has a load of planets in Cancer. It's got Venus at 3 Cancer, Jupiter at 5 Cancer, Sun at 13 Cancer, Mercury at 24 Cancer. So all of these points, Mars is going to be going over them. So, okay, these are whole sign, using a whole sign house system. These would be in the 8th house, Placidus, some would be in the 7th, some would be the 8th. But Mars going over these Cancer planets does seem to indicate aggression. And I think I'd be particularly interested with what happens when Mars is at 1319 Cancer on the United States' Sun. Now that's going to be, let's have a look. That will be on around the 28th of September. So in fact, on the 28th of December, Mercury will be at 3 Libra, which will be square United States is Cancer Venus, and Mars will be right on America's Sun. So that's going to be really, I think, very interesting. Interestingly, also the Sun is sesquiquadrate Kamala Harris's Saturn, and so at the end of September, Mars will be on the United States' Sun, and sesquiquadrate Kamala Harris's Saturn. So that will be interesting. So I do think that there's a chance that this Mars moving into Cancer has a big impact on the US, and so we will see what happens certainly between now and the election as Mars moves through Cancer. And I wanted to finish by just very quickly looking at a few people who have Mars in Cancer. I'm not saying I'm going to be able to be particularly enlightening with this, because it is a bit generic, Mars in Cancer, and it can work in so many different ways. So here is the chart of Ted Kaczynski. He was a Unabomber who was very concerned about environmental issues, and he sent bombs to university departments. I think people got killed as a result of his bombs. At least one person got killed. He ended his days in a federal prison, and I think he died fairly recently. And he has Mars at 16 Cancer. So I suppose in his case, Mars in Cancer, there was a lot of stuff he got very annoyed about. I believe, was on the autistic spectrum, and so Mars can be very defensive. And look at his Mars square Venus, a very difficult Venus there. Venus in Aries, square Mars, and perhaps he did not know how to assert himself in the usual way. I mean, he did write this huge tract explaining what he wanted to do. Remember, he was a former university professor. He was a math PhD. He was a very smart guy, but he couldn't assert himself. And Mars in Cancer just got really angry. And Mars in Cancer is very defensive. I mean, he saw the environment around him being destroyed, and I suppose he was saying he wanted to defend the environment, and he felt there was no other choice except to send bombs. I mean, that was his view. I mean, his choice of where to send bombs was sort of a bit strange. I mean, university departments, but he couldn't handle his anger, and maybe also it didn't help the fact he did have Mars in Cancer was his only planet in a water sign, so that's how it worked for him. Now, Mars in Cancer can be connected with drug abuse. Now that might sound strange, and I'm not just referring to the charts, the two charts I'm about to look at, but it kind of makes sense. And Cancer is about security, wanting to feel secure, and wanting to feel comfortable. And certain drugs can make you feel comfortable. For example, heroin, or these drugs that can sort of create a sort of a chemical blanket around you. And so Sid Vicious of the Sex Pistols, who died of I think of a heroin overdose in 1979, and he had Mars in Cancer, and there is his Mars in Cancer. So Mars in Cancer is, where is he putting his energy? Well, he perhaps, despite everything, despite all the chaos around him, and he had this very sort of difficult relationship with his mother, and I know that some people sort of really blame his mother, and because I think his mother took heroin as well, and so it wasn't a useful environment for him, and Mars was perhaps putting effort into perhaps finding comfort, and so that might be what heroin is about. And so that is why maybe he died of a heroin overdose, and that's one possibility. But I haven't got time to really look at his chart in detail. Someone else who died of a heroin overdose is Paula Yates. So Paula Yates, she had, I think she was married to Bob Geldof, and then she had a relationship with Michael Hutchence, and she died of a heroin overdose. And there is her Mars in Cancer. So that Mars, I suppose that may say something about the men she ends up with. I suppose that's say something about her views of masculinity. And so with Michael Hutchence, I think he sort of hanged himself, didn't he? I think so. But anyway, she has Mars opposition Saturn. That is an incredibly difficult Mars in Cancer opposition Saturn. And I don't quite know why. I mean, if there's a question about why she took heroin, there's a bit of a mystery about what she was doing. I don't think she was necessarily addicted to heroin, but at the time she was just decided to take heroin at a particular, and her daughter was around her, and at the time when she was taking heroin, and she died of an overdose. And Mars in Cancer is, I suppose, where she's putting her energy into, and it is opposition Saturn, and it's square Mercury. This Mercury square Saturn square Mars, that may say something about her attitude to drugs. I mean, Mercury, I suppose, is looking for stimulation. Mercury in Aries wants stimulation at a particular time, takes heroin and then dies. So that's one way of looking at it. Now, on a positive level, Mars in Cancer, what do you put your energy into? What is Cancer? Well, Cancer could be Scotland. Traditionally, Scotland is a Cancerian country. I mean, Cancer is about clans. And of course, the association when you think about Scotland is about clans. And also, I strongly believe that an animal related to Cancer is spiders. Spiders, they like to hang out in webs, and spiders can be very important to Cancerians. And in terms of Scotland, the spider mythology is important because their Scottish national hero, Robert the Bruce. I mean, I don't think it's true, but he, when he was on the run from the English, he was watching a spider trying to make its web, and the spider kept trying, and in the end succeeded. And so, according to the story, Robert the Bruce got this inspiration from the spider. So, looking at Robert the Bruce's horoscope, it's perhaps not surprising that Robert the Bruce had his Sun in Cancer, and his Venus in Cancer, and his Mars in Cancer. So in his case, Mars in Cancer is putting his energy into fighting for his kingdom, defending his kingdom, and his kingdom was Scotland, and Scotland traditionally is a Cancerian country. For example, if you look at William Lilly's Christian Astrology and what countries are ruled by Cancer, he says Scotland, and that absolutely fits. So Robert the Bruce may be an example of someone who is making good use of his Mars in Cancer. Now, another person with Mars in Cancer is Meghan. Now, when you've got Mars in Cancer and you're a woman, there is a certain danger that you project that Mars onto the men in your life. I mean, that really is possible. And that Mars in Cancer may describe the men in her life. And in her case, her Mars, Mars is in the 12th house. It's a somewhat difficult Mars. Yeah, it's in Cancer. It's in the 12th. It's kind of widely square Saturn. And the moon, that moon Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is square her Mars. I don't think that's an easy Mars at all. And I think, at least my theory on that Mars is that Mars is a soldier. Mars is a moody man with a military background, and Mars is Harry. I mean, I think that's quite clear. I know that Harry doesn't have himself is not a Cancer. He's a Virgo, and I think his Mars, off the top of my head, where's Harry's Mars? I can't remember offhand. But anyway, I think that Mars just symbolises Harry, and I think that's as simple as it goes in Meghan's chart. So perhaps she's able to project that Mars onto him. And in terms of other people to look at, the president of El Salvador. Now, the president of El Salvador, Meghan was born on August the 4th, 1981. The president of El Salvador was born on July the 24th, 1981. So they're only born just over a week apart, Meghan and Nayib Bukele. And Nayib Bukele, his Mars is earlier in, Meghan had her Mars at 11 Capricorn, and so Nayib Bukele has his Mars earlier at 4 Cancer. So he's got an exact Mars-Saturn square. In fact, he's got an incredible chart. I mean, I've looked at his chart before. He was born on the day of a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and he's got Mars exactly square his Saturn. So that Mars is interesting for a number of reasons. Firstly, he's got Mars in the 2nd, and you think about money, and he has actually put quite a lot of energy into his country's finances, and he's done some interesting things on with money in terms of trying to secure his country's financial future. And in particular, he made Bitcoin one of El Salvador's official currencies, because there is no El Salvador currency. It doesn't have a currency. It traditionally has the US dollar as its currency, and now he's made Bitcoin his part of his currency. So maybe that's Mars in 2nd, putting a lot of effort into finance. I mean, you could say technically that Mars is in the 1st, but I would have said it's so close to the 2nd house cusp, Placidus, it's in the 2nd. Certainly from a whole sign perspective, it's Mars in the 2nd. And he has Mars square Saturn. There is a harshness there, and there could be a totalitarian streak in order to survive if you've got Mars square Saturn. This is a very dangerous job, being president of El Salvador. I mean, he's always going to be at risk. It's a country that used to have one of the highest murder rates in the Americas. It's now got one of the lowest. In fact, the 2nd lowest after Canada. And the reason is because he's just put everyone in prison. I mean, anyone who remotely might be connected with gangs goes to prison. And from the perspective of ordinary El Salvadorians, it's worked. And so that might be how his Mars square Saturn is working. Maybe it's a successful Mars. Maybe that Mars is Mars square Saturn, that's about his, I suppose it's about his brutality as a leader, but he takes his own defence and in the interests of his country very seriously. So you could say that he's been quite successful. And also, interestingly, Bukele became president on June 1st, 2019, when Mars was in Cancer. Mars conjunct Cancer in the North Node, conjunct the North Node, and Mars is applying to an opposition of Saturn. So Mars conjunct the North Node is perhaps saying that that is the right thing for him to do, to be really trying to be the strong man. And finally, talking about strong men and totalitarian leaders, I'll look at Keir Starmer's chart one more time. And just had his birthday. And I do not have a time of birth for Keir Starmer. And Keir Starmer's Mars is at 6 degrees Cancer. He's got Mercury square Mars. I mean, that Mercury square Mars, I mean, it's good for being a lawyer. I mean, arguing in court, that works quite well. But he has Mars in Cancer. Mars in Cancer, I suppose it shows someone who is very defensive, because Cancer is defensive. It wants to really safeguard its own interests, or its perceived interests. And it's quite clannish as well. I mean, I suppose you could say looking after particular interest groups, and already the Labour government has been accused of cronyism. And of course, the Labour government is backed by the unions, and I think that he's talked about austerity, but yet he's given a huge pay rise to the unions, which maybe that's Mars in Cancer looking after his own backers, although he's not really sort of part of that wing of the party. I think he's sort of I'm guessing more to the right of the party, but he felt he had to do that. And he's also very defensive. And if he sees attacks in terms of people attacking his authority, he wants to do something about it. And perhaps that's why he's sort of cracked down on sort of freedom of speech. Anyone questioning his approach to immigration, particularly people questioning, whether it's right for so many people to be able to immigrate into this country legally or illegally. But so when we looked at Bukele, Mars in Cancer, it certainly has a totalitarian streak, and Keir Starmer, likewise Mars in Cancer, and Mars sextile Sun and Pluto, perhaps also we're seeing a totalitarian streak, because Mars is defensive. When anyone attacks things that Mars in Cancer regards as being important, Keir Starmer or anyone with Mars in Cancer is going to immediately respond, and defense systems will go up, and whoever is a threat, that threat will somehow have to be removed or sent to prison or silenced or cancelled or whatever. Anyway, that's a few thoughts on Mars in Cancer. I hope you found that of some interest. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you are not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.